Let's talk about how to define a function in Python. So we're going to make a function called greet, and it's going to print out hello world. Now you can put as many statements as you like in a function. We're just going to put one. So when we call greet by specifying the name of the function and open and close parentheses, it does whatever that function does. It executes all the statements inside that function. If I were to pass in an argument to greet, I will get an error. I get an error because greet takes 0 positional arguments, but I gave it 1. In order to specify arguments when you're defining a function, you put those inside these parentheses. So here I will print out hello and name instead of hello world. So redefining this function, if I call it this time, I can pass in this argument name, which is Trey in this case. So when you define a function, you put def, meaning you're defining, the name of the function, parentheses, inside those parentheses, if you've got any arguments you're accepting, you put those arguments separated by commas, if there's more than one, colon, which means all the rest of the lines are going to be indented. This is a block of code that represents the body of our function. If I take this function and I call it with Trey, this is a positional argument. I can also pass in a keyword argument or a named argument. In this case, the name of this argument is actually name, so I have to specify name equals Trey. If I don't give any arguments, I'm not passing in positional arguments, I'm not passing in keyword arguments, I'm passing no arguments in, I get an error because this argument has an argument, or this function greet has an argument it accepts called name, and it is required. Arguments by default in Python are required. If you want to make optional arguments, you've got to give a default value. So I'm specifying a default value with an equal sign. Now note this equal sign doesn't have anything to do with keyword arguments. Keyword arguments are when you call a function. That equal sign when you call a function specifies a keyword argument. When you define a function, this is the default value of this argument, which means if we give a value, it does the same thing as before. If we give no value though, it defaults name to world. This function greet here accepts one argument. This function product accepts 2 arguments. Numbers and start. Start defaults to 1. This product function doesn't really work the way it probably should. So when I call product with some numbers, I say total equals product 213. 6 is printed out. I would expect total to be 6. It is not 6. Total is none. None is the default return value of a function. Arguments are the inputs to a function. The return value of a function is the output. Normally, you want to have a return statement inside a function. So now that we've changed print to return, if I say total equals product and we pass something into product, we'll see nothing's printed out, but total is 24. When you call a function, its return value will be passed back to you, the person who called that function, and we can capture that into a variable or pass it off somewhere else. So when you define a function in Python, you use the def keyword, you put the name of the function, you put open and close parentheses with any arguments inside those parentheses. If any of those arguments should be optional, you have to give a default value for them. Then you put a colon. That colon means you've got a block of code that's going to be indented. It is the body of the function, any statements that will be executed when that function is called. Importantly, functions have inputs, which are their arguments, and also an output, which is the return value of that function, which isn't required, but most functions probably should have a return value. That's how you make a function in Python.